This episode of Getting Tabled is brought to you by Valhalla Hobby. Valhalla Hobby is a hobby and game store in Verona, Wisconsin. They're on Half Mile Road and can be found. They're a small store. They concentrate on niche war games as well as the big names. So they do have your Warhammers, they do have your Magic the Gatherings, they do have your Dungeons and Dragons. But on top of that, they actually have quite a few of our favourites as well. Bushido comes to mind. They have your TT Combat games. They have your Star Wars Legion. They have Mantic. They have a absolute huge range, which is amazing given the size of the store. If you're dropping in, let them know that we sent you. There's nothing that we're getting out of that. It's just let them know that we are how you found them, so that they know that this was worth their time. Thank you very much, and let's get into the episode.
Brought to you by some guys on the internet.
This is Getting Tabled.
With your hosts, Jason the Bruce,
You guy!
George the Yang,
I hope you are all entertained by my inaptitude.
Jason aka Major Socks.
We've been doing this and talking about various stuff. One of the stuff.
Now sit back, relax, and get tabled.
Hello, future people, and welcome to episode 97 of Getting Tabled with your host, the Bruce.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to another episode. Thank you very much to Valhalla Hobby. We've been doing this for almost 4 years now, and we finally have someone that's actually been willing to step up and help be a sponsor. We are actually in the middle of trying to get gettingtabled.com finally launched, which wouldn't have been possible if he hadn't have stepped up. So thank you very much for that. No Socks today because he smells funny.
He has family. Oh.
I like my excuse better. Yeah, no, he's got family over, so he's concentrating on that, which is fair. But otherwise, I suppose we should get into some news.
It's just you and me. Just the two of us.
Newly received or noteworthy information, especially about recent or important events.
The moon is made of cheese. Oh, wait, no, wrong kind of recent and important events.
Yeah, no, we're talking about real events, not fictional ones. Also, that was 60s? I'm not sure how recent you think that was.
This is the last century.
Fair enough. just for those of you that are wondering, yes, George is 307. He gets lost track of time sometimes.
I drink fiber every day now, so I'm old.
All right. I'm starting this week with one of my favorite games of all time. It is the game that was the top of my list when we did that a little over a year ago now. Malifaux have some releases coming out. I'm going to quickly browse over the January stuff because we kind of looked at it already, but in passing. The iconic Fae Queen is quite nice. You get both the 32mm one that you will be able to use in the game, as well as the 75mm that you can go nuts painting with if you really wanted to. I believe, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe the 75mm ones are pre-built, which personally I don't like. We'll come back to that in a minute because there's more of them later, but other people do. Survival of the Fittest is also out this month. This is your alternate version of Lord Cooper, the Huntmaster, which is this cool-looking guy here on the left. And we also have the werewolf-looking Marcus, which is the guy on the right, and they come with two Imperium Eagles, which is this two-headed eagle thing here in the middle that looks like a blue phoenix, at least to my eyes anyway. To me, it looks like a phoenix with two heads, but there's no fire. But the stuff that we haven't looked at yet. First things first, they're releasing a plushie for something from Vagrant Song, and it is possibly the cutest thing I've seen out of such a weird world for a while. I kind of like it when something creepy somehow becomes cute as a plushie. It just...
You mean like the Cthulhu?
Yeah, people do it with Cthulhu all the time, and like, especially when you know how creepy the thing is. Seeing it really cute is just so much fun. Because in some ways it makes it creepier. But in February there is 2 boxes that I'm already very, very tempted by. First things first, there's a Clampets box, and if you don't know where the name Clampet comes from, you need to get into your television history. Because Texas tea, black gold. Anyway, if you don't know it, you should be looking it up. So this is a box for the Gremlins. It's a new family that's being introduced as part of the new book that's come out. There's also In the Saddle, which appears to very much be an expansion for that. So we've got this giant guy riding a giant alligator. It would be an alligator, not a crocodile, because it's based in the Bayou. And 2 buckaroos, which are...
There's alligators and crocodiles in the Bayou. There's both.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected then.
Yeah.
I didn't think you had crocodiles in the US.
Yeah. Well, so they're not particularly like American crocodiles. Like you can find Cubans and stuff like that. So.
Okay, fair enough. Yep.
I'm gonna point out how cool the clampets on the little giant beast, and they have the kid on a fishing rod, like a carrot on a stick.
Yep.
That is so goblin.
Oh yeah. Technically,
like,
these are
goblin?
gremlins, but yeah, there's nothing more goblin or gremlin than that.
Yeah, what's the difference between a goblin and a gremlin?
Source.
Yeah, source and the number of letters in the name.
Yep. I love everything about this. I also love, like, there's a gremlin that's wearing one of the creature's skins to try and hide from what he's hunting.
Hey, you're in the box too.
Yeah, I kind of want to know what Bruce is, if I'm honest. Actually, this might tell me if I open it. Bruce is the little dog thingy. If you click on the big picture, it'll open up the back of the box and show you what things are. There's a little dog in front of the guy wearing the skin. That's Bruce. I quite like the buckaroos on the other box too. Like, it's a buckaroo makes me think of kangaroos, which I'm guessing is where the name comes from, but it doesn't look anything like a kangaroo, even vaguely.
Those look like eels that have decided to learn how to walk on land and grew legs.
It makes me think of a chameleon to some extent. Or the Mexican walking fish things.
No, they're giant tadpoles, because tadpoles have that same kind of
You're
tail
right.
thing, and then they start to grow their legs.
You're right. Yep. And Uncle Bog is even bigger than I thought he was. I'm going to have to get this box. That is going to have to... Well, I'm going to have to get both of these boxes, and that's going to change who I want to play with. So the Clampets their keyword appears to be Angler. This is 100% a new faction. I don't know anything about how they play yet, but I suspect I'll be finding out because I want to play some more Malifaux. Okay, getting ahead into March. March has a couple of the starter boxes. Now, these starter boxes are supposed to be just an easy buy-in to the game. So you buy the one for your faction. In March, we have an Arcana starter box and a 10 Thunders starter box. We also have a couple of things from Through the Breach, which is the role-playing game from the world. And the core rules are being restocked. But the thing with these starter boxes is that they all come pre-assembled. I've had pre-assembled... Yep.
Isn't that kind of a bonus? Isn't this the company that's notorious for difficult assembly, in your opinion?
In my opinion, they are the most difficult. Now, how you feel about this will depend on how you feel about the hobby.
Well, so here's my 2 cents.
Can I finish my point first?
Sure.
My point was this is supposed to be an easy buy-in. So yes, obviously for someone that's getting into the hobby and maybe doesn't have a lot of experience, the fact that these are pre-assembled are absolutely phenomenal for that customer base. However, as somebody that's had their PVC pre-builds before, I will never buy anything pre-assembled from them again. That is how bad they are. in my
Okay.
opinion.
That's kind of where I was going was, as you said in the past, these are difficult. This company in particular is difficult to assemble. So the fact that they're doing a pre-assembled box, they're trying to encourage the I've never done this before.
Yeah.
Without scaring them off horribly with, how do I glue this together now?
It's also worth mentioning, like, the value that you get in these boxes. Like, if you click on that image and open up the back side of it, the value that you get in this is absolutely phenomenal. So, I mean, you're getting the 4 pre-assembled minis, obviously. You're getting a full Fate deck, which is a full 52-card deck. You're getting the measuring widget. You're getting the scheme markers. The value in this is absolutely phenomenal, regardless of how you feel about the PVC minis. For the record, I'm in the minority on the PVC minis too. Like, most Malifaux fans, like, whenever I bring this up, most Malifaux fans will very much defend them against my opinion. Because and that's all it is. It's just my opinion. I was really upset with the ones that I purchased, and I will never buy them again. But that doesn't make me right. It just means that I didn't like them. It's not like I'm... Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm arguing something that you can't have a different opinion on. Of the two of them, just speaking minis-wise, I think I prefer the 10 Thunders because Kara is gorgeous. I love the Black Panther.
I'm gonna have to agree with you there too, just because it's more of a looks more of a gang versus the other one looks like some really bored lonely guy that built some friends.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. So yeah, that's it really for the Malifaux that's coming up. Next month we will see what's coming for April, but otherwise, I'm going to move into the next story.
Kiwi battle. Looks like some terrain.
Yep. So this is a series of terrain that they released on Friday. This is actually designed initially by another company. They've worked together to make a physical version of the product because the other company did them as a 3D product, and they had quite a few customers that wanted to purchase it that don't have 3D printers. Yes, there's a lot of those people still out there. Like, significantly, there's a lot of those people out there. So
like
this is
me.
This is a 3D printed item that you can purchase that is reflected in the price, because you'll notice, like, the price of these is actually quite good. The detail on these is phenomenal, though. Like, these have been designed very well.
I'm looking at the price because I don't know how much a New Zealand dollar is worth to mine.
Their dollar is slightly weaker than ours, yeah. So it's even better than you're thinking it is.
Well, just so the first one, the Saxonia Blacksmith, that's $46.99 New Zealand dollars. That's $30.41 in the United States. So, I suppose that's pretty good. Let's see.
Yeah.
Some assembly required. I'm guessing these aren't pre-painted.
No, they're not going to be pre-painted. Yeah. So there will be certain parts that you'll have to glue together. They do show it built, and it is designed to come apart. If you look at their Facebook page, they will actually show you in a little bit more detail how the parts are. But it's just like, and that's the same if you was to print it yourself. It's just, it is the way it is. Also, shipping is a problem with items like this.
Well, shipping's just gonna be a problem, period, because it's gonna have to go from an island nation to your country, and then to the rest of the world. Which, as soon as you add Australia into any sort of logistical path for shipping, the price starts going up quickly.
Yeah. Off the top of, I don't know exactly what but I believe that their shipping from here is not actually that bad. I think they've got deals with their shipping, but don't hold me to that. I know it wasn't that expensive for me to get it, but that doesn't necessarily translate to everybody else. I really like the look of this terrain, honestly. I think it looks amazing. I also like the fact that, like, there's still parts of them that he hasn't updated with painted versions. So, like, the gate, for example, when you open that, a lot of the items for that still show what it looked like before he painted it. And then below that, like the watchtower, the ruined blacksmith, like none of that stuff has been painted yet. So you actually get to see the raw product. And I actually quite like that with a 3D. When it comes to 3D printed terrain, I kind of like when they show you that because it gives you a better idea of what you're receiving. Because love it or hate it, 3D printing is very much a part of this hobby now. I mean, there's literally miniature companies out there selling 3D printed minis as regular priced items. And yes, I'm referring to you, Warmer Hordes. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing depends on A, how they're priced, and B, what they look like. So I like the fact that all of this is showing you how it looks. Like even the painted stuff, you can still see how it's been painted. Like the paint isn't being used to hide detail or to hide layer lines. Like you can still see how it is. The thing I like about items like this is that it's very clearly been designed to try and use those layer lines to its advantage.
I'm looking at the Great Hall, and with the way they've layered that up with the thatching roof and stuff like that, I mean, you're going to be pretty hard pressed to see the print lines.
Yeah. Some of that is going to come from the way that it's been angled and stuff when it was printed too, I suspect.
Which I, and for its price too, it should be, but that Great Hall, that is an impressive looking piece of terrain.
Oh, hell yeah. It's also worth noting that 3D print, like layer lines in 3D printers aren't like this anymore, and they haven't been for quite some time. I mean, resin versus FDM, like you can actually print a miniature on a filament printer now. It wouldn't look as good as it does on a resin printer.
Yeah.
But you can legitimately do that. Like you can get them dialed in to be to the point where you can almost not tell. That 3D printing has come a lot further. People that don't 3D print still seem to have this idea that everything that comes from it is garbage, and it hasn't really been like that for a long time. The Great Hall also actually shows you what it looks like unbuilt, so you can actually see. I like that because it's actually showing you what you will receive, which is nice. Yeah, I really like this. I thought it was really nice when I saw it. I have purchased quite a few things from Battle Kiwi, including I have, just for example, if you go terrain and then go sea terrain, they have a thing of islands that I unboxed for the channel. These are 3D printed and they look absolutely phenomenal. So I can actually speak to the quality of their product because I have actually purchased it. Not this particular item, obviously, but I have purchased the Illicit Isles, which I still think might be the best name for a piece of terrain I've ever seen.
Yeah, those look pretty good.
Oh, these are amazing. All right, moving on. TT Combat. There's been a few pieces of terrain that they've released this week. There hasn't been a lot of things in the miniature lines that we've seen over the last fortnight, but some of these new terrain pieces are nice. I think the landing platform in particular is absolutely phenomenal. For the record, George, we're only looking up until it says barracks. Everything below that we've seen before.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I vaguely remember seeing the painting rack. So I first got onto the page, right, and you know, I had my mouse on it. You said the landing platform looks great, and I'm like, it's a square with a couple of pieces because it was shifted to quick view because my cursor's on it.
Oh,
and so I'm looking. I'm like, I mean, I suppose it's all right, Bruce. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, it doesn't look like that amazing. Oh wait, holy cow, that's
hilarious. Why do I think this one in particular looks good? I don't know. It's just pretty. Now this is regular 28mm, 32mm scale, so this is not for Drop Zone. This is for your regular everything else games. I really like that
price. For that price too, that looks like a hell of a piece of terrain.
Yeah. I mean, all of this stuff is quite nice. I mean, the gantries are fine. I kind of feel like I've seen these gantries on every website that's ever made terrain. I mean, this is not a criticism. It's just that this sort of thing is built by quite a few people. I do like the fact that it's not just all square platforms. Like you're getting that 45-degree cut on everything, which gives it more character. This also appears to be a little bit more modular than some of the other stuff because everything comes apart, which I quite like. It will make it easier for storage too, which is always a problem for MDF terrain, is how on earth you're going to store it.
So I think I actually found my favorite part of the new releases, though.
Yeah.
The objectives.
Yeah, I was getting to that. Objectives is something that everybody needs for every game, but it's one of those really... It's kind of hard because either you're using leftover pieces to make something out of not, or you're wasting a mini to try and create something. I like when you get like actual options. And all of these kind of make sense in everything. I mean, there's some stuff here that you wouldn't want to use in a modern day game, but none of it looks that outlandish. Like, obviously, the first thing that comes to mind for me is Infinity, and I doubt that's accidental. I could see this being used in 40k as well. All you need to do is dirty it up a bit. I really like this.
Why does it have to be dirty for 40k? Why? Doesn't have to be dirty.
Slanesh would disagree.
No, Slanesh, it needs to be naughty.
Exactly.
There's a difference between naughty and dirty. No, I do too. So 12 pounds. That's probably what, $15, give or take.
It'd be around that for you, yeah.
The pound has gotten strong. 1858.
Oh, okay, it's still not bad though.
But that's still not bad. I mean, to have like actual like dedicated objective markers. I mean, and this is kind of thing too, where if you're a TO and you plan on running 4 or 5 tables at a time.
Yeah, you'd only need to buy 2 or 3 of these. Like you'd have 3 or 4 tables. If you had a full tournament, you'd probably have to buy 2 or 3 to vary it up.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, it's like you've got 6 of some, 5 of another, 4 of another. If you got like 3 or 4 kits, you're gonna have more than enough. So
it could be worse. You could be Ash Barker from Guerrilla Miniature Games that's running a tournament of 2,000 people this weekend. I do not envy that man.
Well, I wouldn't go and play in a tournament like that. That's too big.
It would be for me too.
Too people-y.
Yes, but you live in a state that has 3 people living in it that doesn't exist.
500,000.
You can't have 500,000 people that live in a state that doesn't exist. That doesn't make sense.
500,000 and the same landmass as the United Kingdom.
Yeah. The only other one we haven't discussed at this point is the barracks, which I didn't leave it out on purpose. We just hadn't got there yet. Again, barracks is something that you kind of see made by everyone. I quite like this one, though. This kind of feels like it comes straight out of a video game, which I quite like. It also seems to come with a piece for the gantry to expand the gantry a little bit.
Well, and the other cool thing is the roof is removable from the barracks too. So
this is one thing I definitely like about the TT Combat stuff is they do actually make most of their stuff removable, so that you can actually, put stuff inside of it. Yeah, because I mean you don't have to. You don't have to, because obviously there are some games where inside of buildings just kind of doesn't work. Malifaux comes to mind. And for that blow, you just don't take it off then. It's fine. But for those games where it becomes important, like Infinity and other things, it gives you the option. If you're doing a role-playing game, it's even easier. I really, really like this. The little mini landing pad's quite nice too. At least I think that's what it's supposed to be, looking at the 3D thing. It looks like it's kind of like a little cargo area where like a very small lander would come and rest.
Yeah, like the little resupply ship.
Yeah. I really like this. I think they've done really well here. So that's it from TT Combat. I will just very quickly mention that the white box motels will be gone by the end of this week from memory. So if you want to buy any of these cheap bundles, you kind of need to do it this weekend and then they're gone, is my understanding. I continue to be very tempted by the Outer City Motel, but I'm behaving myself. The reason I am tempted by that is because it gives a perfect table for something that I'm developing. At least in my head, as an option. Because I have this idea, I'd like to do a table of like
Which one?
a caravan. The Outer City Motel. It basically,
God.
the table literally becomes like a motel. I love this idea. It's just such a fun idea for a modern day game. I had this idea in my head that I want to create a table that's like an RV, like a trailer park. And this is kind of like a continuation of that idea of what I would like to do.
And based on what I'm thinking, the little pool that comes with it, make that like look green and slimy for the water.
For what I'm thinking of, yes, because yes, I'm thinking Entropy City.
Yes.
If I was to build it, I probably wouldn't build it that way because I'd try to make it fit anything, if that makes sense. Though I don't really have any other modern day games where it would fit. Oh, I suppose I could use it for Marvel and stuff as well. Anyway,
Scale would
on.
be a little off, probably.
It would be, yeah. But moving on, Games Workshop. There's been a few things out of Games Workshop this fortnight, but the one that caught my eye was this Beast Herder box. So the Ash Wastes are getting a Nomad Herder and his Arthramite Dune Scuttler. I mean, the Ash Wastes guy is just another one of the Ash Wastes guy. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. It is a cool looking mini. But it's pales in comparison next to that Dustback. Like the Dust Scuttler. The Dune Scuttler, sorry. That thing is incredible. I think that might be one of the best creatures they've made for years at this point.
I was going to say that they missed an opportunity there to add like something to the Tyranids with that.
Yeah. It's been a while since we've seen something for the Tyranids, actually. I'm wondering if we'll see something significant for them this year. As part of... Because 10th edition will be out come summertime this year. And I can't... It's been that long since they've refreshed that line. Maybe this is the year that they get, like, 2 or 3 big changes in their miniature range.
Possibly.
I don't know who else that they would do. I mean, obviously it's going to be Space Marines and something. But I don't know who else they would do as the big... Because they tend to concentrate really big on one particular force to refresh with their starter set.
I could
It was
see them
Nurgle a couple of
expanding.
years ago. It was Necrons this time.
I could see them expanding the Tyranid. I could also see them like possibly adding to Votann because...
True. I'd kind of like to see Votann as the others. I'd love to see a starter box that doesn't have Space Marines in it. I know it's not going to happen, but I would love to see it because they've never really done it. So it'd be nice if you got Votann or the Guard in there instead of Space Marines.
I think it's too easy for them to do Space Marines because they can just like throw in a couple of sprues and it's like there's enough there points wise to justify the value of the box. I don't think you'll ever see Guard in a box just because it's not going to work. Because you'd have to have too many sprues or it'd be an unbalanced box.
True.
Depends
on how big they want the box to be.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing like a Xenos against like a Chaos because it's always like Marines and Xenos, Marines and Chaos. What about Xenos and Chaos? Like,
yeah,
they have issues too. I'm pretty sure the Tau doesn't like Khorne coming through and like ransacking their territory.
That's a good point. How long has it been since we've seen a huge shake-up of the Tau stuff? Though I don't really think...
No.
Most of their stuff isn't old enough that it needs to be replaced. Then again, when does that ever stop them?
That's true.
I mean, we're talking 6 months into the future at this stage. Like, there's really no way of knowing. But
yeah, because
you mentioned the Tyranids, I was like, ooh, actually. I will just say as one last passing comment, the paint scheme on this guy, I really, really like. the bluey, bony color of that carapace. I really, really like that.
Yeah, that's
I kind of want an excuse to try to recreate it. I don't really have one, but that is the definition of a paint scheme that's not as easy to pull off as you think it will be. It's also probably not as hard as you think it will be, but because it's not just washes being used there. That's some very careful glazing.
I was gonna say I think it's probably their new like shade or whatever they've got coming out now.
I guess we'll find out when the miniature releases because there will be stuff released. Oh, I just realised his weapon is made from their carapace.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that. So that's actually quite nice because it means that you can kind of change up. Because, I mean, if the instant you change and paint that metal, it's completely looking different. But I really like that. Moving on. So, Marvel Crisis Protocol. We're getting a new box coming out for them. This particular one comes with 3 minis, but only 2 characters. So you're getting Emma Frost, which is why there's 2 minis. It's her as her regular form and her as her diamond form. But then you're also getting Psylocke. And Psylocke-wise, it's modern day Psylocke as you think of her from the movies, as opposed to in comics, because her power set was changed. Like she didn't always originally have the energy sword thing going on.
As long as I can remember, she's had like the pink fist thing. That was the one thing that when which one was it? Was it Apocalypse? Where where she was showed up and he looked worse than like some cosplayers doing Apocalypse. But that's the one thing I noticed too was how Psylocke looked so much like the comic book.
Yeah.
Like, like they've always had to take their adaptations of, like this is this character and it looks close to the comic book. And, Marvel Crisis has either gone comic book or cinematic or whatnot. But this is the one character where it's like the cinematic really did a good job of translating the comic book character to the screen. It was an absolutely terrible movie. But
yeah. Paint scheme wise, I don't think I like how they paint the diamond skin. Because to me it looks like ice. I would use more grays, personally, rather than deep blue.
I would flat out try try to make her chrome.
Yeah, that would work as well.
And then like white hair or something like that.
I mean, there's been criticism for the fact that she's doing this pose, which is it's the most Emma Frost pose you're ever going to have. So of course it's kind of, if they didn't have it, it wouldn't really look like Emma Frost as much. But it's kind of like a lot of their poses kind of look the same at this point. I don't mind this. I don't think the painting on that particular face is great. The blue painting is certainly a lot better as far as how it's been done. That face kind of, I don't know. I don't think they like the way the eyes look uneven a little bit. But look, it'll be interesting to see what the sculpt looks like. I won't be buying this because I don't have the X-Men. And Lord knows I can't afford to buy everything. But if you are playing X-Men, then that's something that you're going to have to buy. That's it pretty much. What do we get in the box? We are getting just 3 bases apparently, because 2 of those will be sculpted bases. And we are getting some more tactic cards. Still no new crises, which critics have been saying for a while that they need to add some more crises in there, and they still haven't done it. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, do you have any preference for, like, out of the 3 of them, what you think is the nicest? Personally, I think Psylocke. Yeah.
Just because, going back to the conversation we had a couple weeks ago of, all the female characters have this pose or that pose versus, like the Psylocke one looks good. Yes, it's got a sculpted base there, which that's adding to it, but
they seem to be doing that more and more, actually. I have an unboxing that came out this week. No, coming out next week, where he comes with a a sculpted base as well. It seems that they're slowly moving away from everybody having the same bases, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I know that there are people that aren't going to like the fact that that's changing.
I am not a fan of sculpted bases just for the fact of I like to do my own bases. I think I do a decent job on my own bases. I don't need some game company saying, here's their base and this is what it is, deal with it. I don't like that. I'm saying Psylocke is the better one because like it's a more dynamic like action pose versus
it's actually doing something.
Yeah. Now, let's be honest though, that's what Emma Frost would be doing though in the comic books is just staying there doing that. So whatever.
Yeah, 100%. And I like that they've got her classic looking outfit, which I do like as well. Like the sculpting on the outfit is quite nice. It'll be interesting to see how fine a detail those lines are, though, because I suspect they're going to be very, 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 very thin. I thought it might be interesting to have a quick look at Team Yankee because we haven't really looked at those much. So, I want to click on home.
So, if I remember correctly, Team Yankee is the World War III version of Flames of War.
Very much, yes. It's based on a series of books that I've never read. But basically, it's what if World War II didn't stop? Essentially, then it becomes World War III. If you click on home and go back to the front page, there's actually more to look at than just these utes. By the way,
trucks.
Yes, they're utes.
No, the El Camino is a ute.
Actually, it's probably what these are. Where are they from?
Those look like a Chevy.
They're meant to be European, so they will actually be pickup trucks.
It looks more like a 1986-ish Chevy flare side pickup.
So I quite like the pickup trucks or the utes. I actually, especially given like this is only 15 mil, so the detail on these it does kind of look a little bit short and chunky. But given the scale that they're working with, I actually think this is phenomenal.
Well, and given the fact of like those trucks are short and chunky from then too.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. That makes sense then. Really easy to build.
I was excited about when I found out about this, but no one in my area wanted to pick it up just because, it was more of a modern setting. Like, I'm not a historical war gamer by any means. Like World War II stuff, like I get that. I understand people like it. World War II was a huge impacting event in human history.
Yeah.
But the fact of, this is my era and generation of what is going on conflict-wise. Like, the armored vehicle, like the vehicles you play in this game, like I've been around. I have physically touched and been in and on.
90% of them are based on real-world things that actually existed, yes. Or concepts that never came to fruition. There is a few things that were in theory going to be built and never actually saw the battlefield. Going into like the actual armored vehicles, so this is where military naming concepts get really annoying. So we've got the BTRD, which is a 3-pack of these. I really like these Russian tanks, actually. Like, they're quite nice. So this one has a mortar. There's another version that has, like, an anti-air gun. I like options. Options are good.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the 2S9 Nona S SP gun mortar battery, which is just a different version of the gun mortar, but this one's actually got a turret. Again, this stuff is 15 mil. Like, for 15 mil scale, the detail on these is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
All of them are also really easy to build. It looks like they're a mixture of hard plastic and metal and hard plastic and resin. So each kit is slightly different. And then you have the ASU-85 assault gun, which I think personally is the best looking out of the lot. I really love the low profile in this tank. It looks really cool. It looks very modern day. I mean, I know it's not based on something from today, but it feels very modern day to me. Like, they haven't changed stylistically a lot since this. Most of them are still kind of, I mean, I know they're different, but they feel very similar to this in the modern day.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, that is what current technology dictates, is the appropriate shape for an armored vehicle.
Yeah, it's a real shame. As much as I love mechs, in real world, they don't make sense. Which is a shame, because mechs are cool. Therefore, we all want mechs to be awesome. But if you use them in real life, tanks are just going to be better.
Yep.
And then finally, we have some 15mm trips, because we've already looked at the utes, the pickup trucks. And these are, you've got assault rifle teams, you've got RPG, anti-tank teams, you've got mortar teams. Most of these are single pose. It's just a matter of setting them out on the bases to make them look cool. And honestly, if I was building them, I would literally do that. I would just set them up in a way that I think looks cool. I really don't care how much sense it makes when it, separation and stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're only looking at, at the most, you've got 4 people on one of the bases. Most of the others only have 2 people on a base, so who really cares? I really like this. I also like the fact that although they're single pose and people into historical gaming are usually fairly good with identifying things, I like the fact that they do actually sit there and go, that's what this is, that's what this is, that's what that is, because not everybody does get that. So it's nice that you don't have to go to a Facebook page and go, hey, I don't know what's supposed to be which, can somebody help me? This literally lays it out for you, which is good.
Right.
It's something that happens in Facebook groups quite a lot, with what usually gets treated as stupid questions, even though it's 100% a fair question. And that's why I bring it up, because I like the fact that they are actually laying things out properly and actually telling people what they are. I assume that these red and green and blue dots mean something. I don't know what it means. It's probably something in the... Oh, no, I do know what it means. It's the minis. They've actually said what minis go on what bases. Never mind. I was assuming it had something to do with the rules, but no, it's all of the minis are color-coded, and I didn't realize, because I'm an idiot.
We'll
All
forgive
right.
you, Bruce.
I'm going to talk about one of my favorite games now.
Bushido?
Yep. Because I love Bushido, and it's amazing. So, we have quite a few things coming up this month. So these are all up for pre-order now. The first thing I'm going to talk about is kind of boring, because it's just a token set. The existing token set's being phased out. These are just cardboard. I would probably argue that you don't need to have this. There's a couple of typing errors that's been fixed. And you are getting more in this than you got in the original. So it just depends on how you feel about it. A lot of this stuff is you got your spirit block, you've got your exhausted, you've got your blind. Everything there is kind of it's stuff that you've seen before. But there is certain items here that didn't exist beforehand, so it's been updated because they kind of needed to. But whether you need to buy that over previous ones is another question. We also have a Weeping Sky Cycle deck. This I do need to buy because it has stuff in it that I need. And we also have, what does everybody want? Minis. When do we want them? Now. Where are we going to put them? I don't know, but I still want them.
Where are you going to paint them?
Paint? Who paints things? All right. Weeping Sky Cycle deck is a 54 card deck, which is, it's the current version. So the Cycle deck is something that kind of comes through to refresh the game every so often. When the new one comes, the old one phases out. My understanding is it doesn't mean you can't use the old ones. It's just that you can't buy them anymore and you've missed out, basically. In saying that, you can find them if you want to go looking for them. There's no real teasers as to what's in it. You can find teasers if you want to go hunting. But basically everything in this is updated cards to vary up pretty much everybody. There's things in this for every faction. It doesn't matter who you buy. You will have something in this that you want to use. And for a 54 card unique deck to a game, £12.95 is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, this is not like it's not just a playing card deck with different pictures on it. It's like every card in here is unique. So there's significant costs involved. We start with Stephen Fry in a samurai uniform. Because you look at that mini and you tell me that face doesn't belong to Stephen Fry.
No, it doesn't, because the nose isn't broken.
Oh, fine. So, Kazoku is from the Ryu, the prefecture of Ryu. He's a samurai. He's 17 points, so he is up there. I'm not going to go through all of the rules for these guys, but I do have it on screen now for those of you that want to pause and have a look at the video edition. But all of the cards for these are finally available on the website. They did take a week before they showed up. So the one I like rules-wise is the Yankee. So this is a guy with snake baskets that I had assumed was going to throw them, but he doesn't.
I'm going to say that's probably pronounced Yankee.
Actually, you're right. It would be Yankee, yeah. As opposed to George, which is a Yankee.
No, I'm not, because I'm not from the north.
We can still call you the Yank, so it's too late.
Well, that's a different connotation.
Don't care. It was your idea, so you've got to stick with it. You can't blame me for that. Yankee is 10 rice, so he's actually quite cheap. But he does... Basically, the longer the game lasts, the more powerful he becomes. But he's also someone that's going to die in like the 3rd or 4th round, best case scenario. So he is quite cheap, but you're only going to have him for a little short amount of time. He's kind of a character that you kind of want to hold back until the 3rd round. And in the 3rd round, you let him do all of his damage. And then by the 4th round, he's gone. So for those of you that are huge fans of Blood of Orochi, there's now a Blood of Orochi thing here so that you can moan about it even longer. Because Blood of Orochi is like the most broken thing in the game, even though it really isn't. And it's not even close to being a problem in the game. But you guys want to moan about it all the time. As far as minis is concerned, Master Akusa is the best. Like,
yeah, I was
this
going
is
to say, he's
insanely good.
what's his name from Kung Fu Panda, the turtle?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's like him in his turtle form, but then him if he was human, like riding his turtle form, is what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean this is pulled directly. This is pulled directly from myth, so it makes sense. This is another guy that's going to cost you. He's 22 rice, so he is quite up there. But this guy has all of the rules. Like, he just has all of the rules, and he has a mini that really does live up to it. I really, really like this. Interestingly, he has 2 base sizes on the back, which I don't quite understand. But anyway. Yase is our next one. This is a mini that I am going to buy, honestly. As much as I don't play the Oni, I am going to buy this and add it to my Savage Wave. This is another... it's the first time they're using it, but this is Seocast, which is interesting. They haven't seen Seocast yet. They did do resin for their new Fox box that they did recently. That we'll be seeing general release very shortly. We don't have dates, but we're expecting that that's going to release alongside Adepticon. That is what we expect is going to happen. Sculpt-wise, I really like this guy. Like, he has quite a few very fine horns coming out of his chest. He's very horny, very thorny. He's clearly been visiting the same gym as Arnold Schwarzenegger.
We are not that kind of show when he was describing the horns, folks.
I really like this mini. I love the sculpture on the tights. It'll be interesting to see how much of that comes through in the final sculpt. I want to buy this for a couple of reasons. I mean, it looks gorgeous and I really want to paint it. And slowly buying a few Oni is not a bad thing. If I want to expand my roster. But at the same time, I'm also curious to see how somebody else is doing with Seocast over Infinity. Because I've only looked at the Infinity stuff in person at the moment, and whilst it's certainly not bad, I've mostly had good things to say. I mean, COcast certainly doesn't live up to the promises that COcast said that it would, but I'm very curious to see how this turns out, because I had hoped that they were going to start going into resin full time with their bigger miniatures. Clearly, they haven't made a final decision on that yet, and they're still testing things. So it'll be interesting to see. And we've got two more. We've got Tomo. She is just a very innocent... Oh, no, sorry, he. He's a very innocent... Oh, no, I was right, she. Very innocent and sweet looking. Definitely not corrupted or anything at all. Like, how could you not trust that face? Look how sweet and innocent it is. Yeah, I would not want to meet this person in a dark alley, because clearly your throat is not going to survive that.
I wouldn't want to meet him in a well-lit alley during the middle of the day with lots of people around.
No, because you're still going to get your throat, your throat slit. So this is Chate 7 rice. So this is nice and cheap. Yeah, I quite like the look of that as well. And then last but not least, for the Jung Pirates, we have Garuta, who is somebody that likes explosions to the point where when he's on the boat, his own people take his explosions away from him because they don't trust him. Basically, it's Crazy Harry from the Muppets, but it's in Bushido. That is what I'm taking from this. I even think like the sculpt actually reminds me of Crazy Harry from the Muppets too. The only thing he doesn't have is a sinister smile.
He's got more of an angry like yell going.
Yeah. I quite like the look of this as well. Like, I don't think there's really anything in this wave that's weak. I've already said what my favorite is, which is the guy on the turtle. Very closely followed by the new Oni. But do you have a preference?
Again, like the stereotype like imagery and look, the Kizoko, as you call him, Stephen Fry, just he has that very like noble samurai, size and posture and like presence about him.
The original concept art of this guy actually had him wearing a samurai helmet as well. And there's kind of been mixed opinions as to what people think about having taken that off. I quite like it because it makes him stand out amongst the rest of his guys a little more, because most of the Ryu are wearing their helmets and this guy has.
Yeah.
It just helps him look a little different. But sorry, following him.
Probably either the Yankee or the Yasi.
So yeah, either Mr. I'm throwing snake, but he doesn't actually throw the baskets. He hits people with them, which, like I said, I find interesting. Or Yase. So Yase was my second favorite as well. But yeah,
it's a toss up between the two. Like the Yankee, it's a very interesting looking mini, whereas the Yase is just like it's your very traditional devil Oni type look. Very very Hellboy-esque if he was Japanese.
True. Yep. The thing I like about the Yankee is like they do have like the half snake, half human thing quite frequently. But even across the chest, you can even kind of see where that ends, where his corruption has kind of started. And when I paint it, I might try and actually bring that out so that it's human skin literally right up until a point, and then it completely changes shade. How I pull that off is going to be another question, but I don't know. I kind of like that. It like his chest is almost Two-Face like, because it's kind of like it's coming across here.
Mm-hmm.
So there we go. That is the GCT releases for this month. Like I said, we do have the Foxes incoming still. My assumption is that we will see them at Adepticon, because usually what happens is that when the next new thing releases, the previous thing gets released regularly, and the expectation would be is that we would expect that to be released around Adepticon time. But Night Models is a company I don't talk about very often. I'm not going to say why. It's just that I have opinions on the company. But Night Models are doing Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, which I find very interesting and very confusing. Without me telling you why I find that interesting and confusing, do you know why, George?
Because Simon has the rights to that?
Simon have the rights to A Song of Ice and Fire, which I would have assumed meant both, but very clearly it doesn't. Because these guys have the rights to Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, specifically the TV shows. So that's very, very interesting.
Oh.
So we don't really know anything about this. I assume it's going to be large battle because I don't see how it could not be. All of their games up until this point have either been board game or skirmish size, like most famously Batman. They did previously have the Marvel license and they lost it because they weren't, in my opinion, using it very well. They kind of never really... They teased what the rule set was going to be a few times and never really actually got around to it. Night Models have a history with having errors in their packs, things being miscast quite frequently, or items just... Like, quite recently on YouTube, there was a guy doing an unboxing and literally he opened the box, there was nothing inside of it. And this is one of their biggest supporters. So, and it's been a long-running issue. Oh, yeah, big time. Now, in all fairness, I have never heard a case of Night Models not fixing that problem.
Oh, I know who these guys are.
These guys... I used to play the Batman miniatures game, and it was a problem back then. And I haven't played that game for 4 or 5 years. These are also the guys that are doing the Harry Potter game.
Yes, that's where I know them from, because I was very strongly considering picking up the Harry Potter, because Casey is a huge fan of Harry Potter. We have arguments who narrates it better. You know, Jim Daniels for the American listeners, or Stephen Fry for the British.
There's only one answer to that. The answer is Stephen Fry.
Well, go have a conversation with Casey.
Okay. In saying that, I'm not a Harry Potter fan. I really don't care. But look, this is going to be very interesting. In a game where you are going to have a lot of product, I'm kind of hoping that they really do fix their issue. Like I said, whenever these issues have been raised, they've always been fixed, which is good. But the fact that it's been a long-running problem for 4 or 5 years at this point really needs to stop. Because this is a franchise that you're not going to get away with it. Like, it will run out of control if you let that narrative continue. It's not going to end very well. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like I said, we don't actually know much about it at this stage. To the point where on their Facebook page, if you click the image, all it does is it brings you into a thing to sign up for a newsletter. So,
well, I clicked to it and it takes me to a post about Escape from Arkham Asylum on GameFound for Batman.
That's weird. I don't know how you've gotten to that, because when I click on the link that's on the run sheet, it takes me to a post about Batman Escape from Arkham Asylum. Scroll down. There is a reason. There is a reason I wrote what we were talking about. Winter is coming. It's about 4 or 5 posts down.
Okay, there we go.
There is a reason I said what we were talking about, George. Try reading.
Well, I was scrolling through and looking and clicking for stuff I couldn't find it.
So this is, as I said, if you click on the image, it'll just open up a thing so you can sign up for what you want to get information about. So if you only want Game of Thrones, then that's all you'll get. And otherwise, same with everything else.
So here's why. So as you said, Simon has Song of Fire and Ice, right? If you look specifically here on the Winter is Coming thing, they're licensing through HBO, not George. Yes.
Yeah. Like I said, I had always assumed that they would have been one and the same, but clearly they're not.
Well, considering that, they had to do the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones because someone didn't write the book yet.
Yes.
Essentially, they
still
became... Right, yeah, still has it. And then they've come up with this prequel, which books for that have been written. They
probably never will be. I don't reckon he ever will do those.
Yeah, the HBO does have legal precedence of, they own a portion of this intellectual property now and can probably license it as such.
Yeah. So, like, I found it interesting just because I thought it was an interesting conversation. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Going back to the whole Batman thing, there've been several times where I've tried to check it, because Night Models is another one that's doing CO cast, and I was very tempted to have a look at some of it, just so I could, but I don't want to go down that line again. I don't know anybody that's playing Batman anyway, so. All right, moving on. Traders Galaxy. Now, this first one is probably going to confuse you while we're looking at just a picture of what is a digital book. So, the faction guides is something that Anthony's been releasing to this game to try and... It's basically a $5 item that's trying to achieve a few things. Originally, it was kind of like it was like a brief overview of what a faction actually is. Most of it was lore and images and artwork. And that is essentially a lot of what you're paying for here. This particular one, and from what I understand the ones before it as well, actually gives a new way of playing with the Valiants, called the Ren Cannoneers. I'm actually doing a preview of this on Monday. Well, not just a preview, I'm doing a full review of it, because I was given an early copy of this and asked if I could have a chat about it, so I do. I go through everything. I go what I do like, what I don't like. I can tell you for a fact that there's a couple of things that I have opinions on that Anthony disagrees with, because, that's what gamers are. Gamers will see things differently. It doesn't necessarily mean that I or Anthony are right. It's just how we see things. So check that out on Monday. There's one particular upgrade card, basically, that it's not an upgrade card I would ever take, because the downsides of that car... So the downsides of that card I overweigh over the benefits, and I don't feel that I would ever risk putting it in my list. And he thinks it's one of the best cards in the thing. So it just depends on how you look at things. There's no real... That's the wonderful thing about gaming, is there's no real right answer. The other one I wanted to look at is a preview of something that we have coming up for the Infestors, which is the Summoner, which is this giant spider-looking thing.
It's not available for me.
That's annoying.
So sorry, this content isn't available.
It's because it's on the Facebook group. But that's fine.
Oh.
I can fix that problem, because I can send it to you. But while we're talking, so basically what this actually is it's a combination of parts from existing models to create something new. So he's actually creating a completely new character here at a much lower price, which is actually kind of really clever, actually. So the back abdomen part of that comes from the Queen, which is a rather expensive mini. And then the bottom half of that spider, all of those come from different pieces within the line. Like, this is a combination of about 5 different things to create a completely new mini. Given that I know, given I know how this has been created, I'm quite amazed at how good it looks, because it has no right looking as good as it does, but the thing looks incredible. Now, you're not going to have to kit bash this together. This will actually be a miniature that you can buy. I don't know when at this stage. I can tell you I'm 100% getting it. The way this guy's going to work is he will be able to resurrect dead bots and make them work for him, basically. So this is bringing an undead element into the game that Anthony has kind of always wanted the Infestors to be, and they didn't have at this point. So I really, really like this. Really like this. I assume that you can now see what I'm talking about, George.
Yeah, no, that's what I said. Yeah, I mean, it does look good. Yeah, it's for being multiple kits as one kit. I mean, it usually when someone kit bashes, they're going for the intent of looking for a specific look, and he's done that with the intention of making a new thing.
Yeah.
and it does look good. Like, yeah, as you said, it has no right looking as good as it does for what it is.
For those that are curious, like, why am I talking positively about how this mini is being created? It's worth noting that this is a game literally being created by one person from their garage that is trying to make a business as they go. Like, there's really, really good reasons why he's trying to do it this way, because creating minis is really expensive. So, and if you're only trying to create one thing, it's even more expensive. So, he's being very, very clever in this. I really like what he's achieving here. I don't know how this will be released. I'm hoping it's resin. I'm hoping that it's not metal. That's just a personal thing. I'm not a huge fan of metal minis, but it's certainly possible that it could go either way. I don't have the answer to that. So,
Indy, definition, independent, type, slang word, jargon.
all right. So, Sarissa Precision. Now, this is a company that's been around for a while. This shouldn't really be a company that most people haven't heard of. But these guys have a load of MDF terrain, and in different scales too. Like, the thing I didn't realize initially was how many different scales they have. Like, we was talking about a 15mm game quite recently. You could very easily go 15mm North American terrain, and you have pages and pages of stuff that's just perfect for Team Yankee. South of the border, North Africa, industrial, Far East if you want to play in the Russian side of the world. Far East is more Asian. But there's no reason why you couldn't play there either. The big thing I want to look at. So, George, go to 28mm.
Yep.
Modern, and go retro Americana. So, you remember recently about how I was talking, and I say recently, like 20 minutes ago, I was talking about how I'd really love to create a trailer park table. These guys literally sell an MDF bus, an MDF caravan park, an MDF RV. A little bit further down, there's a residential trailer.
They legit sell a house trailer.
Yep. This is perfect for the table and the setting that I want to create. There's also things like the survival shacks and so forth. The retro Americana bundles are really, really good. So there's a retro Americana bundle 2 that comes with 6 of that trailer. I have almost pressed the button on this several times this week. I'm choosing not to at this stage. I just don't have the funds for it at this stage. I can tell you for a fact I will be buying these. Because this is something that is, to my knowledge, not available anywhere else. I've never seen anybody else make them. And I realize that, like, playing in modern day settings isn't something that everybody is comfortable with, because there's other sides to that people feel uncomfortable with. For pulp type games, for horror type things like Don't Look Back, for example, this is perfect for settings like that, because all of those horror movies are in these types of rundown settings. Like Friday the 13th is quite notoriously set in a camp that hasn't been looked after for decades.
On page 3 of that, they've got motel rooms, like 2-story hotel rooms.
Like what we were looking at with TT Combat a few minutes ago. I quite like the gas station as well. There are a few people that do gas stations. I really like this one. It does feel very American in the way it's been designed, especially with like the retro sloping roof, the way that it is. I really like the electrical substation. That is definitely something I haven't seen anybody else do. I also really like these walls. Like the walls, like there's different versions of them, and they all feel like they come from the same kit. Like they're all broken differently. I really like those walls.
So, and it's funny too, because if you go back and you look at like the residential ranch style,
yep, yeah, that's where I just went.
And stuff like that. Like,
These houses, to some extent, still exist.
Well, so these houses, like, so if you look at a metropolitan area, you know, and as you move out, you can see where growth has happened and when. So if you look at, like, you know, we're just gonna throw out Detroit because it's very fitting. If you look at, like, you know, old Detroit, you have what's called a shotgun house. You walk in the main door, and it's one big long hallway that runs the entire length of the house with rooms.
Yep.
It's called a shotgun house. And then as you expand out, so the people who, you know, had a good job and stuff like that, they moved out of the shotgun house to the suburbs to one of these.
Yep.
And this was, for the longest time, the, you know, like the Leave It to Beaver, Andy Griffith area. This was like the pinnacle of, you know, middle class living, was this ranch house.
Yep.
And
I really like the derelict versions of the houses as well, especially with the Entropy City example.
That's the ones I'm looking at. Is like, those are like, you know, it's like the transition from like the really broken down inner city to the broken down suburb.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, Bruce, we're talking about just like the broken down places for your stuff.
Not all of it, but there is parts of it that's going to be, yes.
But most of your stuff is not going to be nice. You know,
no, and that is nice is going to be... The idea... I don't want to get into my game too much, but the idea of my setting is that the city is big enough that you kind of have a little bit of everything. So, like, the way New York used to be in the 80s, where there is sections of it that's absolutely pristine, but if you walked into the wrong neighborhood, you knew it instantly. That's kind of the picture in my head. Kind of Gotham City in some ways as well.
Yeah.
There is perfect, pristine areas, but a lot of it's not.
The other thing too is that I think you could really take advantage of is the roadside billboards.
Yes, I actually do want one of the roadside billboards, and I want to get it done up with a picture saying about how awesome the city is and why you should move there. That was very clearly put there before everything went to crap.
What's the video game where like currency is bottle caps and
Fallout?
Yeah, like you need to have like not Fallout themed, obviously, because you'll get sued. But like, you know, Fallout-esque kind of, you know,
like
billboard.
They're really like the lady there, like the it's like, and it says like the city of the future.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like, that's the picture in my head of what I would like to do.
And then put the OCP logo on it.
I actually really like that idea. I know I'm only kind of concentrating on one. The only reason I'm concentrating on the Retro Americana is it's something I was genuinely looking for, and I hadn't found it. And it kind of surprised me, because I would have thought that things like trailers would have been easier to find. Now, it's possible that there are other companies that's making them, but this was the first time I come across it. And I come across it accidentally.
Yeah, so... like, there's another, like, and this is very niche terrain. Like, this is not something you're going to use for 40K, Wild West Exit. Like, I can't think of a game off my top of my head where you're going to use this terrain, unless you are doing some ultra board, like for a Cthulhu role-playing game. Because this would fit into that total era of, like, you know, the 40s, 50s investigators trying to find the old one and stop the ritual and all this other stuff. Like, that fits here. Like, you know, your stuff, it fits. Like, this is so niche, it's not funny, and it looks so good.
Now, here's the other thing I'm going to show you. Those that are looking at the video edition already know what I'm about to talk about because it's on screen. George, go to Painting Guide and Hobby and Sarissa Stencil System. And you'll have a page full of...
Sarissa Stencil System?
That's what I said.
You said system.
Oh, whatever. So you'll see a whole big list examples of literally stencils. Like, that's what we're looking at. And third row down in the middle, we have road markings.
Boy, you could have used that like a week ago, couldn't you?
Would you like to... a fortnight ago, but yeah. Would you like to know how I found this website? I was literally... somebody had suggested that I should find some stencils to do it, because it would be a lot easier. And I was like, yeah, but I haven't found any yet. And so I think I asked on I think it was our Discord where it got shared with me. I could be wrong on that, but I think it was our Discord. And oh no, I think it was the On Tabletop Discord actually. And they shared this with me, and it's like, okay, I'm buying a set of those, and I am buying a set of these. I haven't done it yet, but my basis, because the basis for my game, I'm trying to basically do all road themed because it's kind of the way that it is.
What? Why?
Because it's a motorbike game.
I know.
I know. But I was getting to a point, like doing those road markings, I was doing it with masking tape, and when it did leak, I could fix it with paint, but then you could see the black paint because I was using a texture paint that has like a grid in it. This is so much easier. I can put this over the base. I can airbrush it. I'll only ever need to do it once. And it gives me some variation is the important part. I really like the arrows. I really like this.
So I have a suggestion for you to fix your screw-ups with your masking too.
Tamea?
Use a different color of black or something like that and make it look like it's a shoddy patch job in the road.
That is kind of how it actually looks like, actually. When I like dab over the top of it, it kind of looks like somebody's tried to fix it. The thing is that I know what happened there, so I can't unsee it. Most people looking at them won't notice. Because it's just me being a perfectionist. I really, really like this. Elsewhere, like they have brickwork, they have letters, they have a whole heap of hazard markings that I quite like. There's lots, like there's a few companies that do stencils for airbrushes. On the examples they use, they actually show using these with a dry brush, which is quite interesting. I don't think personally it's the way I would use them. I would personally, if I was to do it that way, I would more stipple the paint on personally, because I think dry brush, it's going to end up getting underneath the stencil is what I feel is going to happen. But these are really, really nice. You could lose yourself, and I did lose myself on this website for hours, to the point where I turned around to people in a message. I'm looking at this, the people that I was talking to about wanting to do the trailer park table. I started sharing them the links that I'd found. I was like, somebody stop me before I spend hundreds of dollars. What have you found?
So, have you read the book Ready Player One?
No. But I know what the book is.
Right, Dystopia Future. They had this thing they called the stacks. And these were trailer houses stacked up so you could fit more into an area.
Yep. So where are you seeing those?
So I went to 40 mil, so I don't know if they're available elsewhere. City Block.
Yep.
And you scroll down to the bottom page, Porta Cabin set, and it's stacked.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And perfect for MCP because that's literally the scale. They actually do look quite nice, actually.
Right?
Yeah. For those that are trying to find more options for your MCP tables, I mean, this is certainly a lot cheaper than buying the official terrain. The problem with buying 40 mil terrain is that realistically, there's not a lot in that scale at this stage. As opposed to, I mean, 10 mil scale, there is several games in that scale. I mean, 28 mil, everything's in that scale.
Bruce, we have to go talk about this because we always talk about these when we find them.
Yes.
Go 28 mil. Modern City Block, 28 mil. Go to page 2.
Is this the Dice Towers? Because if it's the Dice Towers, we've spoken about them before.
Have we talked about these Dice Towers?
These are literally the ones that we saw on Kickstarter and we're talking about during the episode where we spoke about.
Oh, were they? Okay.
That's literally what they are. When I make my order, I will be ordering one of these. I just don't know which one yet.
Probably that one.
That one fits, but I just gotta find it.
Do they have a stencil to do the graffiti like that?
No, they don't have a graffiti one. You can get graffiti ones though. If you do a search for Dice Tower.
Oh, do they have a search on? Oh, they do.
Yep, top right-hand corner. You will get all of them. And this is where you'll start seeing things that you recognize. But the very, very last one down the bottom, sci-fi grunge, I actually think looks quite modern day, just a really rusted modern day. I'm really tempted by that, honestly. It wouldn't fit on every table, but why can't it be in the middle of nowhere? I also quite like the pool hall. I mean, the city block is obviously the most universal when it comes to my personal setting, but I really like this.
I think that pool hall one would be pretty good for yours too.
Well, it fits in the setting very well, especially being that it's based around like gang warfare. So yeah, there we go. That's Sarissa Precision. I have looked at an absolutely tiny amount on this website. If you haven't looked at Sarissa Precision, like, trust me when I say I've looked at nothing.
Give yourself a week. Yeah,
like,
give
they
yourself
have
a
a
week.
lot. Let's discuss some hobby.
Trim, glue, prime, paint.
So George is making lots of noise.
I am making lots of noise.
What
What am
are
I-
you grabbing? I assume you're grabbing your hobby.
Yes. Yeah, my standing board was in the way, so.
Fair enough.
Alrighty. And now my rug is being eaten by my chair. There we go. Alrighty, let's see if this will work again.
Yep.
Alrighty, there we go. So, as you saw, I got a couple of things put together from my Speed Freaks box.
He's only had them for 3 years, folks.
Way too long, yeah. I got the two vehicles put together.
Mm-hmm.
These didn't go together too badly because, you know, standard instructions, right? Look for this part number, clip the part, put it together, right? When I got to the boss knobs on the bikes, that's when I discovered the bikes, none of the parts are numbered or labeled.
Yeah.
You literally had to match pictures. So, that was super annoying. So I got these guys put together. I've got 4 more bikes to put together.
You're going
And
to
I will
enjoy
have-
that.
Well, I've got fewer pieces to go through, so hopefully... Alright, I'm going to set this down now. And then I got a player aid for Cthulhu Death May Die. And I got some of them put together. And I ordered these on Etsy. So... let me... Grabbing parts and pieces here.
Mm-hmm.
Bear with me a second. There we go. Alrighty. So you have a dashboard for your investigator. Well, here we go.
Oh, there we go.
So this is laser etched foam.
Oh, okay.
With-
Nice.
with-
I just
yeah,
assumed it was
right?
painted.
No, that's laser etched foam. It's squishy,
Nice.
right? And then laser etched MDF with some corners and stuff. And you put your character dashboard for the game here, and then it has this nice, lovely acrylic cover with holes for your pieces to move.
Nice. So did that come assembled, or did you have to put it together yourself?
I had to assemble it, so I
Yep,
had to
no,
peel
that's
the cover off that. I had to glue this down. I used double stick tape instead of glue because, you know, I figured that'd be faster and better and neater. And then I had to glue on all these little let me point to the right one. These little corner things.
Yep.
So got those off of Etsy. There's a box that's also a dice tray that these go into. But here's the cool part, right? So you got this nice clean acrylic. There's also a piece of foam that goes over it when you store it.
Ah.
So you don't
So you can't scratch
your
it up.
acrylic
That's
as
clever.
quickly, right?
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a pricey investment. It was about $60 for the five of these.
That's not bad for 5 of them.
Yeah. So, you know, you're looking at a little over $10 each. You know, it's a player aid for, let's be honest, a fairly large game I've sunk into that, and I do love the game. So
Yeah, no, I quite like that. I mean, do people need it? No, obviously not, because it comes with its own versions of it. But that is certainly a lot more premium.
yeah, the core doesn't come with anything. The unspeakable blocks, which I spent a lot on, or you can get through the new Kickstarter campaign. It's only like thin, flimsy pieces of plastic.
Yeah,
which they still serve the purpose, but this is extremely premium.
Yeah.
So
I quite like that.
And then I put together the captain for my custody box.
Nice.
And that's been my hobby.
Nice. So I've had a couple of games this week. I played a game.
Yeah, I've been working on a website too for the hobby, so to speak.
Yes, because we're trying to get gettingtabled.com live. It's not there yet. I mean, you can look at gettingtabled.com, but it'll tell you that it doesn't exist yet because it's not live.
Unfortunately, it is. In order for me, when I was messing around, I think the redirect put it live.
Oh, did it? Oh, okay. Never mind. So I had a couple of games this week. I had a game of Bot War. I played with my Infestors versus Bjorn's Coils and got absolutely trounced because as much as people in the group like to claim that the Infestors are really powerful, I'm sorry, but they're not. They are really piddly and weak, like massively. Like they just don't hold up against most of the armies. Coils are certainly not the most atrocious army. When I'm sort of like powerfully atrocious, that would be the democracy is easily the most powerful force in the game, and I do mean easily. But I had fun despite how depressing that loss should have been. I actually still really enjoyed it. It's the first time I played Bot War for quite a bit because we haven't really had the chance to have a game of it because we've been kind of doing, like, there's been the Christmas break and everything else, and the group's kind of split off into doing several different things rather than all focusing on one game, which is not a bad thing because it means that in theory I'll get some more games of Bushido in, but it does mean that I haven't played Bot War in a while. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. I also have had a few games of Entropy City, so I had another game of Entropy City on Friday night with the same person. I've been trying to get like a certain number of people through the first wave. So my first phase of testing has been about the core mechanics and whether they're fun. Just because because I've written a lot more than that. Anybody that's on the Patreon will know I've written a load of it, like 70% maybe. It's just that this last 30% is going to be much, much harder and it's going to take much longer. But I haven't tested anything beyond the core mechanics yet. I do finally have some rules for guns. I've been deliberately holding off with guns on purpose. Like very early on, I kind of explained why. It was because I wanted the core of the game to work first before I brought them in, because I wanted to make sure that was right before I introduced something that could mess it up. So guns, I literally didn't even write anything to do with guns. I knew in theory how I wanted them to work, but I didn't put anything in paper because I didn't want it to influence anything else until I was ready. So basically the idea I want with guns is that they're a little bit harder to use, but if you do hit with them, they're just lethal because, that's how a gun works. But also anybody that spent time in the military, especially if you know people whose job was to be on the back of the bike trying to fire an assault rifle, will tell you it's nigh on impossible in real life. It just doesn't work. But that's boring. So,
but that's also why they're shotguns.
True, but the problem, like when you're on the back of a bike, like you just don't have, like you're not steady, and you kind of need a steady arm to use a gun. But I went with the rule of cool. So at this stage, like you've got like a slightly higher target number. If you're going fast, that makes that target number even higher. I know you know most of this, George, because you were there when I was kind of going through it.
I was trying to provide positive input.
Yeah, whilst not knowing how the game worked largely. But you do have a better idea of how it works now. So yeah, that's as far as that's gotten. So yeah, it's the faster you're going, the harder it is that it is. It's one of the only times where you probably want to going to stop, because that will mean that you actually do have a chance with it. Where melee kind of, there's a stress mechanic where the higher your stress is, the harder it is to do things, to the point where it could eventually cause you to crash out of the game. That doesn't really have an impact on guns, because if you get hit by the gun, you're just dead, because you're not going to survive that. In theory, with a higher powered character, someone that's actually cost you a bit of money, they will probably have something that would allow them to have a little bit more of a save on it. But I haven't gotten to that point in the testing yet, so I will leave that till later. So yeah, I've been having lots of fun.
And you are correct. There is no website. It's only because I'm logged into everything. So whenever I go to it, my computer is just like, oh yeah, this page that you're working on. So yeah, there's no website yet. We're working on it. It'll probably show up for you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it does. It shows up for me because I'm logged in. Yeah, you're right.
Yep. If you do it on your mobile, it shouldn't show up.
So yeah, that's where we are. We are going to do something a little bit different in our game talk.
Talk nerdy to me.
Kickstarter isn't a store. But in a way, Kickstarter is a store.
Yeah,
And
so
there's two ways to look at that.
we do cover Kickstarter. I mean, not infrequently, but we try not to cover it too often, and there's a few reasons for that. Some of which we will get into today, some of which we won't. I want to make it very clear, like, both George and I have had bad experiences on Kickstarter. That's not what this conversation is about.
I'm still having a bad experience on Kickstarter, but that's beside the point.
The only reason I stopped having a bad experience is because I stopped paying attention to the lies that the man was spreading. We will have more information on that when we have our interview at some point, hopefully in February. But I want to talk about what Kickstarter actually is. There's a lot of information on Kickstarter that a lot of us probably take for granted. Like, George hinted at one of the main things I wanted to get into, which was that Kickstarter's not a shop, and it's not supposed to be a shop. I know that there are businesses out there that treat it like a storefront. The most egregious of those being, there's several people in the 3D printing community that just use that so that they don't lose money through Patreon, which is odd because I swear that they would lose less money on Patreon, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think the Patreon payout cut is less than what Kickstarter is.
I know. I don't quite. The reason why they do is completely irrelevant. Like, obviously, there are people that use that platform because they don't want to use Patreon. Maybe it's because there's certain parts of the community that just don't want to touch Patreon. I don't know. It's completely irrelevant. The other side of it is that Kickstarter was initially designed so that people that don't have a way of getting a project funded have a way of getting it funded. It's funded by the community, and in turn, the community that supports it gets something in return. That could be that there's a small film that they're getting filmed, and in return, you get a copy of that film digitally or on a DVD or so on and so forth. And then maybe it gets released within a very small amount of cinemas in the country where that film was made. There's board games that probably wouldn't get made if Kickstarter didn't exist. There are some companies out there that have literally made themselves million-dollar companies through this. Simon is obviously the example I'm thinking of there. They're not alone in that, by the way. And I'm not mentioning it because of the usual rant. I'm just mentioning it because this is how Kickstarter has evolved. So today, like, Kickstarter's been around for what? 7, 8 years at this point? Maybe 9? I don't know. It has been around for a while. Long enough that there are definitely people out there that don't quite get what Kickstarter was originally intended for.
April 28th, 2009.
Ooh, I wasn't far off. I wasn't too far off at all. So that's like 12 years.
Yeah. 13.
13, yeah.
14. 14 now, technically.
So that's kind of the conversation piece here today. But if you've never backed a Kickstarter, generally, and you went through this, what, about a year and a half ago for the first time, George?
Terrain Tutor was my first ever Kickstarter.
Yep. And when we were having the conversation, you were like, yeah, but I don't really have the money for it yet. I was like, no, but you can do it now, George. They're not going to take the money until the campaign ends. And that's the big thing. With
That was the worst thing to ever tell me, by the way, Bruce.
There's definitely a trap on Kickstarter, because if you get excited for something and you start pledging things without taking account for how much you're actually pledging, you can get towards the end of a month and go, oh, I've got like 4 different ones that cost me like $200. That's like $800. Yeah, like it's very easy to lose track of yourself. I've definitely done it in the past. I don't do it as much anymore. I'm very, very selective with what I do. And that's actually not because of that cost. It's more for me personally. It's because I have way too much stuff in this garage over here. And I'm having to go through it and clear stuff out. Like I have a giant box of Mars Attacks from Mantic that I helped crowdfund. And as much as I love that game and would love to play more of it, I never do because I have so much stuff, I just never get around to it. Ironically, some of that's coming in useful for my game right now. I can tell you I'm not getting rid of Mars Attacks. That's something that I will keep. I've had plans for what I want to do with that for a long time. But there's another side of it, because there are certain people, like, there's certain frequent things that happens with Kickstarter that people tend to forget. It's nigh on... It's almost impossible for a project to come in on time. It happens extremely rarely. I mean, it does happen, but it's very rarely. Like, the big example I'm going to use again is CMON. Even CMON, who literally make $1 million business out of putting everything on Kickstarter again and again and again and again and again. I'm not having my rant, I'm just saying. Even most of their projects are usually about 5 to 6 months late. Because this stuff hasn't been created yet. It's not being produced yet. If it's successful, then you can book your place in line. But you don't know who else is getting that place in line before you. So
right. And just as a prime example here, so the most recent one that you and I have both done, that is in the process of shipping right now, the Masters of the Universe. So we're talking, March this year, you and I will both have that game in our hands.
Yep.
They had an estimate delivery of October 2022.
Yes. And this is from a company... No, it's not too bad at all. That's from a company that knows all of what I've just told you, and they are still late quite frequently.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as easy as to say, well, I've brought it, why is it not showing up? And if you pay attention to the updates, most companies are usually pretty good about telling you what's going on, so that you at least, if something's late, you at least have an idea of it. There is downsides to Kickstarter, and I'll come back to those in a minute without having a rant. But there are definitely things and warning signs that you should look out for. Constant delays is definitely one of them, because excuses are very easy to write. We're not going to point fingers in that conversation, but we will have to cover it.
Mm-hmm.
But of all of the things that you've backed, George, how many of them come in on time? I assume none.
No, I'm having a look here because I'm fairly certain I've had more than one, actually.
I've had a couple of comics that arrived on time.
So let's see here. The Dice Tower that I got. That actually was early.
Yep.
That was a month early. Estimate delivery was December 2020. I received November 2020.
Yep. So that's pretty good.
It showed up so quickly. It showed up cases like, what's this? I'm like, I don't know. Oh, it's my Dice Tower. I wasn't expecting that for like another 2-3 months. The bag I got, we talked about those on the show. The backpack that was designed to hold board game boxes. That showed up like in October, and that was also a December delivery as well.
Yeah.
But to be fair, a backpack's pretty easy to make.
Yes.
And then I want to say, I can't remember when I got them. I want to say, well, no, they were late too, I think. Oh, yeah, they were late because...
You haven't actually said what it is.
It's the deluxe board train sets.
Oh, yes. Yeah, they were
the-
like a month late
for-
or something. Yep.
No, that was a lot later than that, but nothing with manufacturing. That's because they got randomly selected by customs
That's
to
right.
have the full on. We're going to inspect every single millimeter of your shipment.
Yeah.
So I have had some on time or early. For the most part, though, we're talking like 2-3 months late. Like here's another one. They estimate delivery of the Redgrass palette in October 21. We got that in 22.
Yeah, because there was production delays because of the incident.
Yeah. But I mean, for the most part, most of the stuff I've backed within like 6 months to 8 months, it's shown up.
Yep.
Consistently.
So the reason I'm having this conversation is that if you're backing a Kickstarter for the first time, you need to remember that those dates that they give you are estimated. They actually say estimated on them too, but people just don't seem to notice that. People seem to have, it's one of these things where people have selective vision as to what they notice. I was told this was going to arrive in November 2020 and it's still not here yet. I mean, that would be a very bad example, but they'd probably have some things.
And like we said at the beginning of the segment, Kickstarter isn't a store.
No, it's not. There are companies that treat it like a store. I mean, the perfect example is your dice tower and your bags. Those already, well, it's not so much that I'll take the bags. Sorry, those bags already existed because they'd backed them before.
Ish.
This was just another. No, those bags literally. It wasn't the first time they made them, and it's not the last time they've made them. They've done it again since, but they usually add new things every time they do it, and they just make it available again, and it's just it is what it is.
Well, so here's my next example of, or is it? In the case of say CMON.
Yeah, and that's where I was.
Sure, it's a couple months late, but you can consistently back a CMON project, and at this point, they have a flawless track record of delivering a product.
Yeah.
So, if you see a Kickstarter by CMON, you have a 100% guarantee right now that that's going to show up on your doorstep, maybe a few months late, but it is going to show up.
I would be reluctant to say 100%. Mismanagement can happen in any company.
I'm talking nobody's right now.
Yes,
I'm talking right now. Right now.
Yeah.
Because if you go back 2 years, Mythic Games was in that same of
this is exactly why I mentioned
they have delivered everything.
Yeah.
We're 2 years later and they've delivered one thing now and
everything's outstanding. Yeah. And a lot of the excuses that they have given are
of their own making. Well, the excuses are problems of their own making, essentially.
Yeah,
like they can say all they want, but we'll get off of that. We're going to talk about Platypus Industries now.
Yep,
Platypus Industries is exactly the kind of company that
needs to be there.
Kickstarter. Yeah, this is exactly the kind of company because this looks like a great game. I unfortunately am not going to be able to back it because my favorite game has an expansion coming out, so I went with that instead of the Australian game. I'm sorry, Bruce.
But even that, I mean, he's another guy that's been through, and that's delayed. And like, none of this talk about delay is an accusation on the people that are delayed. The whole point of that conversation was to tell you this is very frequent, and something when you go into this, you should expect it to be late.
Well, and so here's my next thing too. If you're delayed, sure, things happen.
Yep.
Tell me that you're delayed. Tell me why you're delayed. Tell me what you're working on to catch up, or why you're taking longer because you're trying to deliver better quality product.
Mm-hmm.
You can delay all day long as you are being upfront, honest, and a reason why.
Yep. So
things happen.
Here's the other thing. The other side of this question is what you should expect from a company when you have backed one of their products, assuming that it's successful. First things first, whether this first one's a good thing or a bad thing depends on yourself. If this is a company that launches Kickstarters quite regularly, you should expect that you will eventually get an update to tell you that the next one is coming, and that if you're interested, please come and back it. And it will usually be something along the lines of, oh, this is very exciting, we're now doing this thing, please come and support us, please, oh please. Like, it'll be the whole, it's very exciting, you should support us on this too, because look at how great this thing was. It usually happens after a project has been delivered, but in a case of like a company like Simon that does 5 or 6 a year, you will get that obviously before your product has arrived, because that's like, you can't produce a game that quickly. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it does annoy certain people. I am one of those people that get annoyed by it. Sometimes it depends on how it's worded, because sometimes it feels like you just get hounded. But once you're in, they will treat you as one of their fans that's interested in their stuff, because you've helped fund their project. You're part of their family now, so you're very clearly going to be interested in whatever it is that the next thing is. It doesn't mean that you have to back it, but there's obviously a chance that you would if you were happy with what you receive. But you should also be expecting at least semi-regular updates. During a campaign, you would usually expect to be receiving updates every couple of days. It depends on the campaign. Some Kickstarter fans tend to expect a lot of attention during a campaign. Like, they expect to, usually, there are people that literally get paid, and the only thing that they are paid for is to run the campaign and answer questions. Because there will be people that back out if they're waiting an hour to get a question. Now, that is very much not a fair thing for a business to have to deal with, but it is kind of what is expected now, especially from big companies. That's certainly one of the things that the small guys struggle with, because, I mean, hypothetically, if my Entropy City thing became successful one day and I had to go to Kickstarter for it, which I probably would have to, I don't have the money to do it myself. I have a real-time job. I work 9 to 5. Like, there's no way that I could be online 24/7, and there's no way that I'd be able to take a month off to do that. And most small people are the same in that regard. Simons of the world, obviously, they have $1 million businesses, and they can afford to hire people that could literally do that 24/7. Maybe, probably 3 or 4 people.
It's usually 3 from what I've seen of their campaigns.
Yeah. And most of them tend to have pretty good reputations with their communities because they get known over time. But you should be expecting those sort of updates. Once a campaign goes live, you will stop receiving daily updates or every 2 or 3 day updates. Initially, for that, big companies will usually go, okay, we're taking a week off now because we have nothing left. They usually kind of collapse for a week.
So, just to give you an idea too for the viewers, listeners, and we're going to go back to Masters of the Universe because that's the most recent one that we're expecting delivery.
It's where I was leading. Yeah.
Yeah. So duration was from 9/14/21 to 10/1/21. So 2 weeks.
Yep.
In that 2 weeks, there were 73 updates from the starter campaign to the close of campaign.
Yep.
73
a lot
updates.
more than one a day. Yeah.
Which, yeah. All the way up to, we're at update 108 right now. So from 10/1/21 to January 21/23, we've had 20 some odd updates, 30 some odd updates.
Because you will eventually get to a point where it's like it's one a month, or at least it should be one a month. Sometimes it's one every couple of months. It depends on what's happening. For a company that's got a reputation that they can rely on, usually they will actually tell you when to expect it. Simon are usually pretty notorious for once a month, and if there's not going to be an update, they'll usually say no.
So per Gary, and the terms of Kickstarter, a successful campaign must update once a month upon completion.
But not everybody does.
So company like Simon, who they're at the point of they have to dot I's and cross T's exactly with everything else they've got going on because they're also publicly traded. So I's and T's
because they're owned by Asmodee.
Yep. So they do a once a month update on every campaign regardless, because that's what is required of the terms of services. If they don't do that and they miss out on that, someone's going to come knocking on the door saying you're not doing your job.
Yep.
So
my point was more going to be something along the lines of, like, you should be expecting once a month. And if you don't get that, your update for that month might just be things are continuing. We have nothing new to update, but feel free to ask questions if you have them. Like, that could literally be the update that you receive for the month. Because if they have nothing to show you, they can't make it up.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I would much rather have an update like that saying nothing new, things are continuing on from where they were last month. That's great, because you're at least telling me there's nothing new. When a company goes 2 months and the only thing you're seeing is, announcements of, hey, we've sold this, or hey, we need to do this, and then like all these other projects have no updates on them, it's like, what are you doing? What's going on?
Yeah.
It's...
Yeah. And then you get to the other side of it, because whenever there is a funding opportunity, there are people that will take advantage of that system. And unfortunately, Kickstarter is not immune from that. And I'm not specifically talking about gaming here.
I will specifically bring one up because it was a great solution for a problem that board games have. And unfortunately, I didn't pay attention to comments because it was exposed before the funding period was ended. And so of the high point of $88,983, they only finished the campaign with $53,940. Because it was found somewhere else on the internet, the designs of their project with someone else's name belonging to someone else, and this company was just trying to kickstart. Yeah. Yep. So this is where
it does happen.
Yes, it does happen. And I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. Mag holder. I even mentioned it on the show because I thought it was great. It's plastic trays that stack together are magnetized for holding all the various stacks of cards for a game, say like Nemesis. How many cards are in Nemesis, Bruce?
Too many.
Right? Massive Darkness 2. Too many.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the result of some of these games is they have a lot of cards. This is a great solution. They magnetize together. You could stack them. They were great. They were wonderful. I think the pledge was like $50 or something like that for a set of 10. Seems pretty reasonable.
And that was stealing it from somebody else.
And they were stealing it from someone else. And then the pledge manager opened on the 15th of October saying, go fill out your pledges, add-ons. And that was the last you've ever heard of them.
Yeah. So unfortunately, there are not a small number of stories of this. If you are curious on the darker side of Kickstarter, again, we're not here to rag on companies at the moment, because there's certainly one that we could. There's certainly two that we could mention. But if you go
sorry, Drew, I just looked at the mag holder one that I was just talking about. It actually does now say deactivated by Kickstarter, which means you can no longer access the pledge manager to give more money. So,
if you are interested in the dark side of Kickstarter, it won't exclusively be board games and war games, but do a Google search for Slope's Game Room. He has an entire series called Kick Scammers, where literally he talks about these projects and some of the most notorious ones of people stealing your money. So the thing I like about Kickstarter specifically is that Kickstarter have a requirement that you need to have a prototype that exists. So you can't just say we're going to create this thing and it's a pipe dream and the technology doesn't exist. You have to at least, in theory, prove that it exists. So even like with the example that you used, like it was a stolen item, but they could at least prove that it existed. So in theory, that's how it got live. I can't say that I'm going to create a console with technology that's going to fit in the size of my hand, but it has the power of a PS5 and will play PS5 and Xbox and Sega and because that clearly doesn't exist. But there are other crowdsourcing campaigns where companies could technically create those and do quite regularly. because it's not necessarily required that you have to show that there is a prototype. Because it's up to the audience to determine what they're willing to back and what they're not. So yeah, if you're interested in the darker side of Kickstarter, I would definitely recommend that. Like, there are some horror stories that will terrify you, but it's definitely worth having a look at some of those stories. Because if you start worrying about, because I mentioned earlier, like updates, like it's really easy to make up an excuse for delays. Some of these excuses are fairly notoriously copied and pasted. I won't mention who, but a certain person that lied about another company being the reason why their company fell over, was very much using some of those excuses. I would be surprised if there's not more investigation done there at some point. But it's the other one that we've hinted at has used a few a few convenient excuses as well. It's convenient excuses that you need to be aware of. Like, production delays are 100% a real thing, but it's also 100% an excuse that people can use. Because there's not really a way of proving that there's been a production delay. I mean, hypothetically, if I receive prototypes, because you will receive prototypes before production to ensure that you're happy with the quality of what you're receiving, and if I have an issue with it and I want something changed, that's going to create a production delay. Because that needs to be changed, and therefore it needs to be checked again before prototyping, which is another cost to me. If that happens with CMON, like CMON did have that with He-Man at one point, there was something that they were unhappy about. It didn't come out of the mold properly, so they had to redesign it entirely. Mm-hmm. It was the trees? It was some, I don't remember what it was. It was something. And that's one of the reasons why they got delayed. Now, CMON actually showed what they were unhappy with, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't show everything, but they showed enough that it was like, no, this is what's going on. And I'm not saying that companies have to do that, but if they're unwilling to show anything, that's the red flags that you should be aware of. Because, like I said, it's very easy to write an excuse.
Well, and that goes to my argument of CMON is a large enough company that, you know, they're going to do something like that of, you know, hey, we're delaying because this isn't meeting our standards.
Yeah.
So, and then one more thing on Kickstarter that, you know, that we need to talk about, because I'm pseudo affected by this.
Yep.
And you are directly affected by this. A great, awesome, well-managed, funded campaign that has all the stuff happening for it. All this talk, they show up to conventions, and then all of a sudden, nothing.
Yep. And that could 100% be a legitimate thing. Or it could be that it's just been mismanagement. Or it could have been somebody that was pulling the wool over your eyes the entire time. Like, that can happen in all three situations. Now, sometimes people go out of business. If I go to create a game on Kickstarter and I have all of these really impressive prototypes and everything looks like it's rolled up, like, through 100% no fault of my own, I could go under financially if I've, like, undercosted something, or if production, like, the costs of some of the materials go way above what they should. Like, the pandemic affected this. Like, we've said several times that we were surprised more companies didn't go out of business because of it. Because, like, metal minis in particular got extremely expensive at one point. It still hasn't entirely recovered. I mean, it's better than it was, but it's...
Yeah.
Like, we are getting to a point... I've been saying for a while, I think we're at the point where metal minis are just not going to be as affordable anymore.
Well, I'm of the standpoint, though, I hope metal minis go away, because I can't stand.
Oh, I don't like them either, but I try to make it clear that that's not why I make these comments. I mean, I really don't like metal minis at all. Like this, I find that there's very few upsides to them, other than for a business standpoint, they used to be a lot cheaper to produce with a really high quality. But the downsides of them, in my eyes, was just so frustrating. But if a company goes out of business, there really isn't much that you can do on Kickstarter because it is one of the risks that you take. It's one of the reasons why, and I will mention them now, the Mythic Games thing scared us so much because they had several Kickstarters that were outstanding that was millions of dollars. And if they had have gone under, there would have been nothing that anybody could have done about it. Unless it could be proven that they'd been fraudulent, which wasn't necessarily the case.
So I think that would have been, so one, you'd have to look at French law because they are in France. They are, that's the country they're in. To the tune of over $6 million, and then that all disappears. That's large enough that the government is going to stop and, start going through your records, figure out, like, you have defrauded people at this point.
Yeah.
I think that's the exception. Let's like these CMON games where they're, multis of millions of dollars. Probably the same thing. We're going to talk about Platypus Industries with drop bearers. 179,000 Australian dollars.
Yep. If
something worst case scenario happens and this game does not get delivered, there's not going to be much of, quote unquote, an inquiry to that. I mean, the amount of funding for the investigation versus how much was lost, it's going to wash. It's, there's going to be a level of we don't have the resources to look into this.
And Kickstarter won't help you on this.
Yep.
I mean, best case scenario is if it's found that somebody is being fraudulent and lying to their, I'm going to say customers, but backers, then they might close the campaign down. Hopefully it gets closed down before the money goes to them, but if it's afterwards, there's really, that doesn't actually help anybody. There's been a few cases where American customers have been able to do a class action lawsuit, and in theory there was money that got back to some of them, but very few got all of their money back. And even then, it was only the American customers that actually got anything back at all. Anybody from anywhere else certainly didn't. So there's genuinely a risk. Now, there is actually a section that they're required to fill out on Kickstarter about the risks that you will be facing and how they're dealing with those. A lot of the time, that section is copy and pasted. I do look at it, but honestly, it usually reads the same thing almost every time. Because most of these companies, is there risks? Yes, this is what the risks are, but it's not going to happen. I've planned for everything. And maybe they have planned for everything, maybe they haven't. It's kind of irrelevant. But as the consumer, we need to be looking at that more, because when these things go under, it's us that gets affected, and you really don't have much of a leg to stand on, because you didn't buy something from a store. You don't have a trade commission that can back you on this, generally speaking. So you need to be aware of what risks you are willing to take, because there is risks involved. So I think that's the largest part of it. I mean, Kickstarter is an amazing thing. There is products, and I talk about Kickstarter. This does apply to everything else as well. GameFound is one that's more modern and is trying to kind of become the new standard when it comes to gaming. GoFundMe is another crowdsourcing one, but that's specifically for I need help. Can you please help me with this? It is certainly another one that gets defrauded a lot, though.
Yeah. The big example of that was the homeless guy that gave this couple his last $20 and they got like $500,000, and it's like, oh hey, they just all three of them scammed the hell out of everyone. Yeah. That was good stuff right there. So that's it. Like, we have backed things. Like, I am certainly a fan of Kickstarter. I'm certainly very, very selective with what I back nowadays. I'll get lost in the hype train as much as anybody else will. The reason we are not Kickstarter focused in our news is because I try to be very, very selective with what I choose that I want to talk about. For example, CMON are on Kickstarter right now with the third wave of their Marvel United game. I have very strong opinions on that game. They're very negative opinions. Not because of the game itself, but because I don't believe it belongs on Kickstarter.
Therefore, I chose not to cover it. There are other ones where it's like, this looks really good, but I don't know who you are, and I don't know how much I want to risk talking about it. So that's why we don't always cover everything. Also, sometimes there's news to talk about for, actual companies that exist. So I wanted to do this because I think it's an important conversation that needs to happen a little bit more frequently, and we're both people that's been burnt. We're both people that's been very, very happy. The last thought I will leave you on, if you back a game and you receive that game and it's really good and you're proud to have been part of it, that is awesome. The thing you need to remember, though, is that although you helped create it, you don't have any ownership of it. It's not your intellectual property because you helped fund it. This is not Shark Tank. You're not backing it and getting a percentage of the company. You're just backing it in exchange to receive whatever it is that they've promised you. There are people that have an issue with it in that regard. I don't think that's really fair, personally.
I think the only legitimate standpoint someone would have on something like that is, at this point, like I'm going to use the big thorn in my side, Hell of the Last Saga. Mm-hmm. I am in that game for $285.
Yes.
That makes me an investor. Investors are due the courtesy of information. Open door, transparency. That's the word, transparency. They are owed that.
Yes.
I have given them money. Yeah.
My point was more that you backing it doesn't mean that you have stock in it. Even if mentally you feel like you're invested in it, you don't own stock in that product.
So, and then we're going to finish up on one little side note of what you just said. If you backed a game and you're happy about it. So I did back a game, and I did see it for sale on Miniature Market because they're also owned by Asmodee. So who would have thought that you'd see a CMON game at Miniature Market on sale, since it's all owned by Asmodee, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to get my hands on the deluxe version because I did back it on Kickstarter. It was about $30 more than the regular version that is available on Miniature Market. I also have about 10 times the game.
Yes.
Instead of 3 monsters, I've got, I think, 10 in there, which means more replayability, a more fun game. That's part of the risk you take when you're doing something on Kickstarter like this is there's also a chance, especially with some of these board game companies, where the game you get is more of the game than what someone can go and buy.
Yep.
So, and that's part of the lure and attraction to a Kickstarter as well, is if I do this, if I help this company bring this idea to life, I get more out of it than someone will get out of it 2 years down the road when they just buy it off the shelf.
It is worth noting, though, that not all companies can go to the same level that others do. Like, CMON are quite notorious for this, because they, rather than just doing what would be a normal retail box, they will go with an entire line, and sometimes more than half of it is not going to be available at retail. Mm-hmm. It's factored into the price that you're paying. You're not getting this stuff for free. People seem to assume that they're getting it for free, but they're not. But if you're going for a small creator, you cannot expect that they are going to be able to do that. You would get a discount because you are backing them, and you should expect one. They should be showing you what that discount would be. Like, it might be that it might be like a minimum, like it's $10 to $15 cheaper than what they intend to do at retail, maybe. It's usually more than that, but that's what you could... That should be part of what you're expecting, but don't let a company like CMON become what you expect from a campaign, because that's not what it is. That's not a dig at CMON. I'm just saying, big companies can afford that, small companies can't. Because if it's a one-man team, they are barely going to... they're probably not making a profit to begin with.
There it is. Let's see. So, let's see here. I believe this was I'm trying because this is also it's not a small company, but it is a reasonably small company. What are they called? Where's their name at? I've blown right past it. My God, I cannot see the company name on this Kickstarter.
It doesn't matter. It was just a point of like different companies can afford to do different levels of extras. Whilst you should be expecting them, don't expect to get a mile of stuff for free. And even the stuff, like, it's not for free anyway. It's actually factored into the price.
Right, but I'm saying, like it's Darwin's Journey. I can't see who the company is. But, and yes, they are a premium item you are paying for.
Yeah.
It's in a collector's edition of the game that, you could have pledged for.
Yes.
The retail copy is not going to have that.
Yes.
And that's even with the Scooby-Doo game. I paid more for that than what the actual retail copy is.
Mm-hmm.
I paid more for that content. No one else is getting that content though from retail. You can't get that content at retail. I did pay more for it.
I backed a documentary on Kickstarter, which was somebody did a trip riding on their Honda P50 from Malaysia to England, literally the entire trip, and they filmed it on like just a regular action cam type thing, and like they actually filmed the entire trip, and they backed it so they can get like professional editors and stuff and da 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 da. It's a wonderful thing. You can actually find sections of it on YouTube. For that, I got a copy of the DVD, which is not being sold. Like you cannot buy that DVD, and that's what I got that was exclusive. I did another one where it's like a thing on Mall Santas and the life outside of that. And I got a copy of either a Blu-ray or a DVD. I don't remember which. Ironically, it featured a wrestler that I'm a very big fan of. And I got a copy of that. It's never going to be sold outside of it. So it's not just, like I said, it's not just board games. It's not just extra stuff.
I'm just saying that because that's our primary focus is the game aspect.
I know.
But yeah, typically out of Kickstarter, I mean, you should get something of exclusivity and like I said, and that should it should help bring some joy to the whole experience and keep you coming back to support some of these projects. Like I said, Drop Bears. I really want that game. I look forward to it.
I look forward to it arriving.
Yeah, and that didn't stop me from giving the guy a couple bucks to here you go.
Yeah.
I just can't get the full blown thing.
Yeah.
I mentioned, my favorite game is
Yes. Yeah. No, it's fine. Upcoming events.
Tournaments, demos, conventions, that kind of stuff.
What
So
kind of stuff?
I just want to move on because we've been talking in circles for like 10 minutes. So.
Yeah, you're fair. Yeah.
Because I tried to end that conversation like 4 different times.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, upcoming events. I'm only mentioning the one at this stage. It's Adepticon. It's March 22nd till March 26th. We are starting to see the list of people that are going to be showing up at this stage. It's definitely worth keeping an eye on your favorite gaming companies to see if they are planning to be there, or if they have people that are running tournaments there, one or the other. I know GCT Studios are going to be there. We can expect that there will be a big release for the event because it is one of their bigger events for the year. And we should be expecting that the Fox box that Georgie is going to buy should release at that stage as well. George is going to buy. But that's the only one I wanted to mention.
George can't really come up with a good excuse not to.
No, I know. That's the wonderful thing. I thank you again to Valhalla Hobby. This is the first sponsorship that we've had as part of the podcast. We are, it's something that's been available on our Kickstarter for quite a long time.
Patreon.
Patreon, sorry. It's Patreon. It's because we just talked about Kickstarter for a whole lot. And we kind of we reshuffled it a few times, but we've actually got somebody on board. It's the only way that we can afford to do our gettingtabled.com, which is being worked on at the moment. George kind of jumped the gun on something, and it's kind of meant that it's been delayed before we can connect something, and that's fine.
No. Everything's working fine, but for it to be as pretty as it should be, we gotta wait another 47 days? No, 57 days, I think.
Yeah, it's fine.
No. Yeah, I think it's about 48 days now, actually.
It's the merge thing where it rather than it being a redirect thing.
It's,
So-
it's DNS entries and stuff like that. If you want me to talk about that,
It's boring.
I'll
We don't
record an
wanna talk about it.
episode. It'll help you go to sleep.
But that's it. Thank you, Valhalla Hobbies. Like I said, they're based in Wisconsin. They are a small store. They've got all of your big names as you would expect, but they're also covering a lot of the smaller niche games as well. I mentioned a few of them earlier: Bushido, your Star Wars stuff, BattleTech, Call of Cthulhu, both of the drop games. Plus, it's a huge list of different things here. So definitely go and check them out if you're in the area. They do have a website, which is valhallahobby.com, which I did not mention earlier. If you're in the area, or if you're in the
US, mention that if you didn't,
or if you didn't, or if you're in the US, go and check them out. And thank you very much. If you
find our
like,
post,
if you like what we do, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Patreon.com/gettingtabled. We have a competition running at the moment where for every month that you support us, you receive one entry into the competition where we're giving away a giant Shaltari battle fleet for Drop Fleet Commander. It includes the Dreadnought, the starter box, the frigates box, and the cruisers box, and that'll all be sent out to one lucky person. Most of our posts are available on facebook.com/gettingtabled. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/gettingtabled. How can people get in touch, George?
You can email us at gettingtable@gmail.com. That may change in the future as well, but for now, gettingtabled@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram @gettingtabled, and the website right now is gettingtabled.weebly.com. Pay attention for when that changes as well. Bruce, you have a Twitch.
I have removed my Twitch because unfortunately I will not be able to stream for the next 6 months.
Oh, that's terrible.
I have a change of hours coming at work in about a month and a half time, and it's going to last for about 6 months. And it's kind of meant that it's not really worth going back. If you want to follow me, it's twitch.com/JasonTheBruce. I'm not going to, I can't do it on a regular basis anymore. I may do it casually between now and March when those hours change, and then maybe casually over weekends, but I can't do it as a regular thing because by the time I get home from work with the new hours over that 6 months, it'll be too late for me to start. I have other people in the house I have to consider. So,
Bruce, stop being an adult.
Trust me, I'm not happy about it. The reason I accepted the position that I'm in is because this wasn't supposed to be happening anymore. But it's not just affecting me, it's happening across the entire ward, and everybody's unhappy about it. So, kind of rocking a hard place. That's it.
Is that it? That's it. This one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For listening to Getting Tabled. Music used in this podcast was created by Eric Matthias at soundimage.org.